It's time for gumbo, beignet, and jazz. Let's cap the card at the fairgrounds for Lecomte and the Run to the Roses. Salutations and welcome, friends. My name is Matthew Desantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle at Failed to Menace. And welcome to another episode of Capping the Card, where I, your humble host, take you through an entire card and give you my top pick, my top value play for every single race on the card. We try to do it in an economical way. Sometimes you see videos. I'm guilty of doing this myself. I can talk for an hour and a half about a pick four sequence. But we try to get through all these picks quickly, and so you can get a sense of what to expect on this card. And for today, of course, we are headed to New Orleans, etouffee, gumbo, beignets, Jackson Square, all the great stuff. One of my favorite cities to visit. And of course, the fairgrounds and kind of the unofficial kickoff for the run for the Kentucky Derby, which is highlighted, of course, by the Lecomte Stakes, which is the 14th and final race on the fairgrounds card Saturday night. That's right, 14 races. And here's the real kicker, 7, count them, 7 maiden special weight races. So there is a lot to get through on this particular episode. But before we get into it, very quick reminder, make sure to subscribe to Trust the Profits for all of our content. We got Derby rankings coming out. We got Colin Sheehan with all of his Derby prep updates. I have my weekly win play show episodes. We also do the Cap in the Card every single week where we go around the country and do this format. That's a lot of fun. We got the lounge on Thursday nights with El Hombre. We got the formula giving out graded stakes previews. We have so much content. We already have our 2 early top 10 Kentucky Derby contenders up. So there's so much content. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be educated about what's happening as we make a run for the Kentucky Derby, the run for the Triple Crown. You really need to subscribe to Trust the Profits. So make sure to do that right away. And the easiest way to also do that is just to give me a follow on Twitter. Go to Twitter, give me a follow at the handle at Failed to Menace. And you can get all the great content that I'm putting out, not just for Trust the Profits, but in general, as we go through the Kentucky Derby prep season. Okay, well, with that being said, like I said, we're going to run through all 14 races on the fairgrounds card on Saturday. And here's a little disclaimer before we get into that. First of all, 70% chance of rain on Saturday down there in New Orleans. So could be a sloppy track, could be a wet track, could just be a good track, could just be slightly off conditions. The turf might be a little bit of an issue. The fairgrounds turf has been an issue to this point. Of course, they took all the races off turf for several weeks to try to give the turf more chance to grow. Turf still is not really in that great a shape. You add a little bit of water to it, could be a problem. So we'll just have to wait and see how track conditions play out on Saturday. I tried to take that into account when handicapping the card a little bit here, but going to run through all 14 races, give you my top pick, my top value play in all of them. And so let's get things kicked off with a maiden special weight race. And that's going to sound like a broken record because, as I said, there are 7 of them. Amazing. 7 maiden special weight races on the card on Saturday. So we'll kick off in race 1, which is a $65,000 maiden special weight 6 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-olds and up fillies. And it is a state restricted race for those Louisiana breds. Listen, this is a really interesting race to kick the card off with. I would not be upset with anyone who wanted to use the number 1 horse, Olivia G, at 7-2 in the morning line, or the number 7 horse, New Destiny, at 3-1. Those are very logical horses. I think New Destiny has had too many bites at the apple. This was going to be its 8th race now, and she's not been able to get it done to this point. 3 seconds and a third. It feels like maybe she's a little bit of a hanger, so I'm going to look past that. Olivia G is a really nice horse that I would normally really like to play, but breaking from that inside rail on a 6 furlong sprint, young horses breaking from the inside, something I tend to avoid. Therefore, where did I end up? I ended up on the number 4 horse, Much More Than Ready, at 5-1 on the morning line. This is a horse from Michael Stidham, jockeyed by CJ Hernandez. second back from the layoff. This is a 31% winning move for Stidham. This is a horse that progressed nicely and took a pretty substantial amount of time off, 6-7 months from June 1st to December 29th. Actually started his career at Delaware Park running against Open Company. Now you might say, well, Delaware Park, Open Company, what does that mean? Well, the horse that finished second that day, Tippin Josie, actually is a stakes placed horse and has won two other races since breaking its maiden. So, that's come through and has had some nice races there. Then Much More Than Ready comes back in a state bred race at the fairgrounds, runs a third place finish off a pretty, like I said, pretty long layoff of almost 7 months. This horse will have to progress. I will think one of the things I like about this horse, it's a smaller field than last time. Last time out, 12 horse field. And this is a horse that sat in the back of the pack and made a huge run, past a ton of horses late. I always like to see horses that are able to pass other horses, passed a ton of horses late, but just couldn't quite get there. It was still, well beaten by the eventual winner. But nonetheless, I think being in a slightly smaller field really going to help in this spot. So look for Much More Than Ready to, I think, really score a big win here to kick things off. Now, in terms of a value play, I do like the number 2, Yaki Betterfly. It's a weird name, I admit. This is a horse that gets the blinkers on. I just really like the equipment change here. This is a horse that just, broke last and was just kind of last the whole way around in his debut just about 2 weeks ago at the fairgrounds, coming back on pretty short notice. But I think this is a horse that, like I said, the blinkers coming on should really help get this horse a little bit more forwardly placed. And also, I think it's good to see James Graham stay aboard for Alfonso Balderas. Graham is winning 21% of his races at fairgrounds this year. That's obviously a very strong percentage, one of the better jockeys, I think, in that colony. So the fact that this is a jockey that stays on this horse tells you that maybe they see something here. I do think the first time blinkers is a move that's worked for this particular trainer before. So at 12-1, you're getting nice value in this race. But there's some other nice horses. I mean, I wouldn't be upset. The 5, She's a Lucky Rebel, even the 3 for Harper, all good horses. But like I said, Yaki Betterfly at 12-1 is kind of a big price, maybe, that you can consider using. Well, let's move to race 2, which is another $65,000 maiden special weight, 6 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-old fillies. And this is Open Company, not those state restricted races. And this is another one where this is going to be a name that you're going to hear a lot on today's episode, and that is Brad Cox. Brad Cox is winning 45% of his entries at fairgrounds. Now, people go, oh, you try to beat chalk. I always like to try to beat chalk. But there's also a time where you have to look at Brad Cox and go, geez, Brad Cox is winning 45% of the time. That's really good. We probably shouldn't try to beat that all the time. And when he and Florent Giroux team up, winning at a 43% clip, Cox is just on fire at fairgrounds right now. And it's not just winning. Get this, out of his 33 starters that he's put into this meet at the fairgrounds, 24 have finished in the exacta. It's not just that he's winning at a 45% clip. He's at over 67% clip for the exacta. Just absolutely incredible. Arden's Assault is my top pick here. This is a Medaglia d'Oro, a Violence Progeny. Violence Progeny, very precocious. Violence has had a significantly, improved first time out statistics. First time out 2-year-olds, 20%. First time out 3-year-olds, 17%. That is well above normal. Usually the percent victory for 3-year-old first times out, the average is about a 9% rate. You see Violence Progeny nearly doubling the average rate of 3-year-old first time out winners. So that's always, I think, a really telling statistic to see those Violence Progenies doing well. The dam is untested, but again, Cox has been working this horse regularly down there at fairgrounds. I think, solid works and regular works. The bullet works have been solid. A couple of nice 5 furlong works as well. I think this is a first timer that's ready to go. Now, there is a horse I do like that adds a little bit of value. Really contemplated potentially using this horse up top as my top pick, but Super Explosive, the number 3 horse, 9-2 in the morning line. I think if you want to try to look to get past the Brad Cox horse, this is where you want to go. Is a gun runner, Remember what we always say, when all else fails, bet gun runner. So it's a gun runner colt, seems to be improving. It's interesting, drop down in class a little bit. I don't mean that in terms of maiden special weight, but this is a horse that was running in $123,000 maiden special weights in Kentucky. Last time out, runs in a $50,000 maiden special weight at Fairgrounds. So a little bit different level of competition. Ran against some very strong horses initially at Churchill Downs. Pretty Mischievous, Towhead, some really nice horses there. Then goes, runs a really strong second, almost gets there, only gets beat by a half length last time out at Fairgrounds. It's a horse that also is shortening up in distance a little bit, was going a mile and a 16th, 7 furlongs. Now they got this horse going 6 furlongs. I think that's those horses' best distance. Best speed figure was last time out. I think this horse now, second time on Lasix, picks up Louis Saez. A lot to like there. Mark Cassie has been firing. This is a trainer who has had really, really successful meet at Fairgrounds and is really successful right now in general. Turned out a lot of winners at Gulfstream Park. Get this, out of the 10 starters that he has entered at Fairgrounds, 9 have hit the board. So 9 out of 10 have been in the top 3. Super explosive. A good play there in race 2. Let's go to race 3, which is another $65,000 maiden special weight. You might think the graphics department screwed up. It did not. We're just continuing to roll through those maiden special weights. But this one is a mile and a 16th on the dirt for 3-year-olds, obviously. And this is one where, I'm going to try to get past some of the favorite here, Spielman, which is a Keith DeSormo horse. It's not a bad horse, but I don't know. This horse just, I'm not sure. This horse just kind of keeps running the same race a lot of times, runs well, but kind of flattens out a little bit in the stretch. And so I kind of want to look somewhere else. And so where did I end up? Well, I ended up on the number 6, Cagliostro. And for Cherie DeVaux, who I really respect as a trainer, interestingly enough, this horse gets Lasix. Now, listen to this. DeVaux is a 22% winner when adding Lasix to a non-first-time starter in maiden special weights. So, in other words, when a horse runs the first time without Lasix, then gets Lasix added for the second race, 22% winning move for DeVaux. That's not bad numbers. It's also a horse that came out of a very, very good race at Saratoga. It's coming off of a layoff, but DeVaux is known for getting horses ready off the layoff. She's done this a lot, done this very successfully. One of the things I'll say is the winner of the debut race that Cagliostro was in, Champion's Dream, goes on to win a grade 3 2 races after that. So, obviously a very talented field that horse came out of. 4-1 on the morning line, Cagliostro. That's where I'm going to go for my top pick. My top value play, really kind of played around with a couple, but I do like Odds On Tony, I should say. Odds On Tony is a horse that made up a ton of ground late in his debut and went from 9th by 11 lengths, closed like a freight train, still finished 5th, but only by 2.25 lengths. So made up a huge kick late. I think stretching out is only going to benefit this horse for Ken McPeak with Brian Hernandez aboard. So it's had some nice works since that last effort on December 26th. I just think this is a horse that, like I said, you stretch this horse out, the 2 furlong works since that debut effort. I really like 6-1 on the morning line, gives you a little bit of value there in race 3. Let's go to race 4, which is yet another $65,000 maiden special weight, 6 furlongs on the dirt. And this is again for the fillies and Open Company. And this is one where you're going to go back to Brad Cox, but you're getting a little bit of a price here at 9-2 Merlaza. 9-2 on the morning line. This horse will probably take a ton of money, though, because it's a Brad Cox, Florent Giroux connection. Those connections, like I said, 45% for Cox at Fairgrounds this meet, 43% when he and Giroux are teaming up right now. Here's the thing, though. Mi Vida, who is the dam of Merlaza, 2 of the 3 offsprings finished second in debut. It shows that there's some precocity there underneath, that the dam has given birth to some rather precocious offspring that run well on debut. So I like to see that. Medaglia d'Oro up top. You can't go wrong there. This just feels like a nice play. This is a horse that's been working out very regularly, a combination of 4 and 5 furlong works that I really like. So I think Merla's a very nice play there in race 4. In terms of value, I really went back and forth between the 8 Unsung Melody, which is a John Ortiz horse that I do like. If you're looking for maybe a little bit more value, that horse is at 8-1 on the morning line. I do think there's a lot to like there. The pedigree's quite nice, I think, and the workouts look good. Ultimately, though, I ended up on the number 7, Mariah's Appeal, 6-1 on the morning line for Philip Bauer, Deshaun Parker aboard. This is a little bit of a pedigree play. Distorted humor, very successful with first out 3-year-olds. Okay, a little bit like what I was talking about earlier with the violence, having really strong success with first out 3-year-olds. Like I said, the average is only about a 9% winning percentage. Distorted humor at 15%. Violence, like I said, at 17%. This is also a horse, very strong workouts. You look, this horse is running some very nice 4 and 5 furlong works. That December 16th work in particular at Churchill Downs, minute and 1 from the gate. Very nice work that day. I think this horse has a lot of talent for Philip Bauer. Deshaun Parker aboard, have a lot of trust there. 6-1 on the morning line. So my value play, Mariah's Appeal in race 4. Well, race 5, we finally get out of the maiden special weights and we move to the Marie G. Krantz Memorial Listed Stakes, which is a mile and a 16th on the turf for 4-year-olds and up for the fillies. And this is one where I like Wave of Goodness, the number 6 horse up top. And this is a really interesting race, in my opinion, because this is a race where there's some horses that have some muddied running lines. And, a horse like Charlie's Penny is 3-1 on the morning line. I'm just not going to buy that horse at 3-1. Only one time on the turf, and that was a turf sprint at Colonial Downs. Admittedly ran well, but now stretching out and going on the turf, I just don't know. I'm not too sold on that. Wave of Goodness, a lot to like there. 4-1 on the morning line. This is a horse that the last 4 times out, listen to the speed figures, 69, 77, 81, 86. There's a consistent and upward progression. I like to see that from horses that are kind of consistently getting better. This horse also has nice late speed in a race that might feature some upfront speed. So this horse can absolutely have a kick. But here's the thing. This horse is not a dead closer. Okay. This horse doesn't need to be all the way at the back, can be sitting mid-pack, maybe even a stalking trip, but still have that kick to come at the end. So I like Wave of Goodness at 4-1 as my top choice. Now, in terms of value, I went with the number 4, Carpe Venom, 8-1 on the morning line for John Ortiz and Raylu Gutierrez. And this is one who is a horse that finished right behind, a little bit behind, I should say, Wave of Goodness last time out. But here's the thing. This was a West Coast turf horse for Phil D'Amato. Now, Phil D'Amato wins everything out in the West Coast in turf. You should know that. Horse took 6 months off, came east, ran for John Ortiz and Raylu Gutierrez, and finished 5th. But here's what I would expect that horse to finish 5th in that particular effort. Long layoff, now coming from west to east. But here's the thing: second start now in its new surroundings. I think that's beneficial. I think, the fact that Ortiz has more time to get this horse working out on the fairground circuit is beneficial, getting more comfortable with the weather, the climate, the course, the setup, everything. Raylu's on this horse again. This horse has nice early and late speed, some versatility to be able to sit wherever it needs. So I do like Carpe Venom at 8-1. I think she's good value on the morning line. Well, let's go back to the main special weight races and let's go to race 6 on the card, which is yet another $65,000 maiden special weight race. And this one is a mile and a 16th on the dirt for 3-year-old fillies. And where we're going to go here, we're going to go to Michelle Lovell's horse, Spartan Queen, 6-1 on the morning line. Really nice debut on a good sealed track and fairground. Something to keep in mind. Again, the weather could be a little bit of a factor. This is a horse that ran well on and off track. That's important to me when looking at the weather and considering which horses might handle this best, particularly younger horses. So this horse has good late speed, should want to see some pace up front. I do like the 5 furlong works since that debut effort. Ran a 101 and 2 5 furlong work on January 12th. I always like to see horses come back from that first effort looking good, feeling fresh, running well on the workout track. So I like Michelle Lovell's, this horse maiden second start this year at Fairgrounds. She's winning 25% of those. This horse posted a 58 Beyer speed figure first time out, which really puts this horse around the class of the field. So really like this one a lot up top. In terms of value, I ended up going to the number 8 Cushy at 8-1 on the morning line. It's getting the blinkers on, which is an 11% winning move in maiden special weight races for this particular trainer, for Michael Stidham. And here's the thing. You look at that debut effort, goes long, goes the mile on a 16th, loses, third place by 11 and a half lengths. Here's the thing, though. Those top 2 in that particular race just ran away from everybody. Okay. So, in some ways, this horse was the best of the rest. And the works have looked good since then. And this is a horse that was admittedly, rather green on debut, should have a little bit more seasoning now, gets the blinkers, puts on, should get this horse a little bit more focused. I like what this horse has to offer at 8-1 on the morning line. I think there's something there. These are a combination of winning moves for Stidham in terms of the blinkers on, maiden second starts, all of that good stuff. So I like this combination with David Coe on a board for Cushy in race 6. Now let's go to race 7, which you guessed it, is another maiden special weight race. And it's another $65,000 maiden special weight race. And this one is 6 furlongs for 3-year-olds. And this is one where we're going to go to Steve Asmussen horse, City Knights, at 7-2 on the morning line. This is a horse that I really like a lot. Dam has produced a lot of good sprinters. The works look very strong coming into this race. I think there's a lot to like here, even though you could argue this might be Asmussen's second best horse in this race. You could make an argument that First Defender, who's actually 3-1 on the morning line, who has Tyler Gaffalione aboard, is actually his top choice, if you will. I think that's a very good horse. I do like the works on City Knights maybe a little bit more. I just like the pedigree a little bit more. I think this is a horse that's much more intentionally bred for sprints to some extent. When it comes to debuts, that's something I take into account. Some of these horses, like a First Defender, who's a quality road horse, some of these horses are meant to be stretched out. They're meant to be classic route running dirt horses. And when they're debuting at 6 furlongs, it's not quite enough to let that whole frame unfurl and to really show everybody what you're able to do. City Knights, though, on the other hand, this is a horse, like I said, there's a lot of sprinter pedigree there. I think this is one where, this is a horse maybe that is more set up for that 6 furlong distance. Guess Brian Hernandez, very good jockey aboard, obviously. So like that up top. In terms of a value play, put me on the rail, which I typically don't like doing in maiden special weight races, especially sprints, but I really like this horse, Pinfire, 8-1 on the morning line. This is a horse that saw a massive jump in Beyer speed figure from first to second time out, posted in 9. That's right, a 9 number first time out, then goes and posts a 61 last time out. I happen to think the 61 is probably closer to what this horse really is. Ran it also at about this level, maiden 50, maiden special weight $50,000 race at Fairgrounds. So I think, this horse has tactical speed, showed it in that second race. If this horse can escape that rail with that tactical speed and, sit pretty nicely, I like that a lot. This is a Bolt Doro progeny as well. Always love those Bolt babies. So I'm going to use Pinfire as a value in race 7. Let's move to race 8, which is now we're moving into the second half of the card. And I promise you there's only one more maiden special weight race the rest of the way. But this is the Colonel E.R. Bradley Stakes, listed stakes race, mile and 16th for 4-year-olds and up. This is another race that is really interesting to me because you have some horses that I just don't really trust. A horse like Price Talk for Brad Cox at 3-1 on the morning line. Second back from a layoff. I get there's a lot of angles to like there. I'm not 100% sold on this horse. I also think there's going to be a lot of speed in this race. And I think the two price talk could get sucked up into some of that speed. Two Emmys is coming off a long layoff, hasn't run since June. So I'm going to kind of look past that horse. And all of this takes me to the 4, English Tavern, 9-2 in the morning line for Michelle Lovell. This is a horse that ran a strong second last time out to a huge long shot, Spooky Channel, who I want to say won that race last time out after like 500 days on the bench or something like that. It was this huge layoff and won at a big price. So a little bit of a fluky effort, but nevertheless finished second that day. I think this is a horse that has a lot of talent. This horse has nice late speed, but can also be well positioned early, is not a deep closer, is not necessarily pace dependent. Here's the other thing I like. Last 3 times out, 92, 91, 92. Last 3 times on the turf in terms of buyer speed figure. You know what you're going to get from English Tavern. Just a very consistent horse. So I'm going to look to English Tavern in this particular spot. I think this horse is sitting on a nice effort. In terms of value, I really like the 6, Sailing Solo. This is a horse that had some really nice turf efforts back in 2021 and then took over a year off, came back in November of 2022, almost took 2 years off. I mean, last ran January of 2021, comes back November 2022, tries to get on the turf, but gets rained off. Sloppy sealed track, still finishes third in an $80,000 $80,000 optional claimer, I should say. And that was a pure leg stretching effort. I think now, second back from that long of a layoff, they're going to have this horse ready to go. This is a horse that absolutely has that early speed. But here's the thing, the track at Fairgrounds, while I do think there's a lot of speed in this race, that turf at Fairgrounds may very well end up favoring front end speed. We've seen that with some of these turf tracks that are maybe not up to snuff. We saw that Churchill Downs, that really tended to favor front end speed. This Fairgrounds turf may end up doing the same. So I like Sailing Solo getting back on the turf, second back from a very lengthy layoff, but showed it still had a lot of talent, still had that early speed in its last time out. So like that one a lot. Let's go to race 9, which is an $80,000 optional claimer. And we're going to go a mile and a 16th on the dirt. And this is a really small field. This is only a 6-horse field, and it's probably going to be smaller than that because Tappett's Conquest is entered in this race, but is also entered in the Lecomte. So, hard to see Tappett's Conquest running here as well. So it's probably going to end up being a 5-horse field. Banishing is the morning line favorite, the Brendan Walsh horse. That horse took a massive buyer speed figure leap from 65 to 90 the second time out. I like Brendan Walsh a lot. That barn is absolutely getting hot right now. Has Tyler Gaffalione aboard. That said, whenever I see that huge of a jump for a horse, a lot of times, I'm a little bit skeptical. Is it real? Especially at a short price. Do I want to trust Banishing at 2-1? Probably not. So I'm going to end up going to the number 5 horse, Determinedly, at 7-2. This is a horse that took a while to break his maiden, admittedly, but this horse already kind of has muddied running lines. Was on the turf for 3 races, was on the dirt for 3 races. Also really does have his form flattered a little bit. First time back on the dirt after 3 turf races was on the Breeders' Cup undercard, losing to Arabian Night, of course, who a lot of people are looking at as one of the Bob Baffert's top horses and top Derby contenders. So loses to Arabian Night, then comes back, breaks his maiden, wins next time out, and beats Shopper's Revenge, who comes back and wins a stakes race next time out. And then breaks his maiden, I should say, next time out. And then Sun Thunder also comes back, who finished third in that race, comes back to win next time out. Then steps up, runs in the Gun Runner at a mile and a 16th in the Gun Runner Stakes, finishes third to Jace's Road and Ray's Cane, but is now back in an optional claimer 80, which I think is a perfect spot for this horse. 7-2, you get Louis Saez aboard for Mark Casse. Again, I like that combination. I like Cassie's barn a lot, especially how they're running at the Fairgrounds. I think Determinedly at 7-2, really good value for a top pick. And then in terms of value, there's not a lot because it's such a short field, but I do think Invulnerable at 9-2, Joe Sharp horse with James Graham aboard. This is a horse that took nice progression from first to second time out, broke its maiden at $122,000 maiden special weight, then goes and runs a very competitive second and $100,000 optional claimer going a mile. I think this horse, again, now it gets Lasix for the second time. I would expect another progression from this horse at 9-2. I think you're getting nice value there for the son of Practical Joke. Well, let's go to race 10, which is the final of the 7 made special weight races. And this is one where we're going to go back to a combination that I've talked about a couple times, Mark Cassidy and Luis Saez, and we're going to go to the number 8 horse, Mobster. This is a horse that I like quite a bit. And this is a horse that I think, and this is a race that is pretty interesting. It's got some interesting combinations, but I do like the 8 quite a bit. Mobster, this is a horse that showed improvement every single time out, gone from a 56 to a 61 to a 77 Beyer speed figure as this horse has stretched out in distance. Granted, last time out did get beat by Banishing, who we just talked about last time, got beat by Banishing by about 8.5 lengths. But that was when Banishing just kind of romped over that field, finished second that day. Now coming back, I think this horse has a lot to prove. I think I like the pedigree a great deal with Uncle Mo up top, with a Meadow Lake Dam underneath. 3 for 3 in the money, hot barn. I just think this one's kind of a little bit of a no-brainer at 3-1 on the morning line. Now, in terms of value, I do like the one, which I should mention is a coupled entry. The 1A is Silver Bull, who actually is a very nice horse in his own right. But I like Fightin' Ready, the number 1 at 9-2. This is a horse that, again, saw a really significant jump first to second time out in Beyer speed figures. Now, here's why I will buy that one a little bit more. First time out was a sloppy sealed track. Second time out, dry, fast conditions. Now, I know there might be some rain in the forecast on Saturday. I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to make it a sloppy sealed track, though. It might be good, but again, I don't think we're going to see as bad of conditions as this horse saw in debut. More Than Ready, Colt. I think this is just a better surface. This is a horse now second time getting Lasix, and I think is at the right level of class. And I just think this is a horse was kind of the best of the rest last time out as well. Lost to a horse, Phileas Fogg, by about 3.5 lengths, but then beat everybody else by well over a length, and then the really beat another horse, Single Ruler, by who's also in this race by a length, and then Single Ruler was 7.5 lengths clear of the next closest horse. So Fightin' Ready, like I said, nice effort in that last effort time out. 74 Beyer speed figure, like that a lot for the number 1. Well, let's head to race number 11 on the card, which is the Duncan F. Kenner listed stakes. And this is 5.5 furlongs on the turf. And this one is an interesting one because this one, you're not seeing double. You're seeing my top pick and my top value play are one in the same. This is a race that has some big names. This is a race that has Pyron, who won this race a couple of years ago, and who, is a very good horse. Actually, and finished, if I'm not mistaken, maybe third in this race a little while back. But this is a horse that, has had some nice races, but has not been seen since September 8th, last time out of Kentucky Downs. Maniwa, a horse I absolutely love, cute little ears on that horse for Wayne Catalano. But here's the thing, that horse, ran really well, won the Phoenix, which is a grade 2 on the dirt, goes to the Breeders' Cup Sprint, runs I think a really strong competitive 4th actually that day, right behind Elite Power, CZ Rocket, and Jackie's Warrior, but then comes back last time out, 6 furlongs on the dirt, finishes 6th in that effort. I always just worry about horses coming back from those Breeders' Cup races. I had imagined there's still just a little bit of a hangover here. And so you're also putting this horse on a different surface. I understand this horse ran in this race back in 2021 and ran well in this race back then as well. But I just, like I said, Maniwa is a horse that I'm going to look in another direction for, especially because the last 2 times on turf have not been nearly as good as the times before that. So 9-5, just a little too much for me for Maniwa. As a result, I go to Evan Singh. This is my play in this race. I like this horse a lot. Young ascending horse with increasing speed figures. This is a horse that they tried to stretch out a little bit. It's really not meant to be stretched out. It's meant to be much more of a pure sprint horse. This horse likes to come from the back of the pack, but here's the thing. There's going to be plenty of speed in this race up front, and I think it's going to set up nicely for Evan Singh in terms of the pace format. Here's the other thing. While there are several also eligibles, the field is only 8 horses deep. I actually think that's a huge benefit to this horse. This horse, if this horse was in an 11, 12, 13, 14 horse field, I would be worried because it's a lot of traffic to weave through. And he's demonstrated that he leaves himself a little too much to do. Reminds me a bit of Gufo, actually, in that regard. Gives himself too much to do. You put this horse in a smaller field, in a 7, 8, 9 horse field, not going to be able to drop back as far, not going to have as much traffic to weave through. I just think this horse for Albert Stahl, I really like this horse a lot. Jockeyed by CJ Hernandez. I think this horse is going to pull a little bit of an upset. 6-1 on the morning line gives you some value and my top pick. Well, let's go to race 12, which is the Silver Bullet Day Stakes. And this is one where I spent a lot of time trying to get past Brad Cox. I really tried to get past Chop Chop in this race. A horse that admittedly, if you watch my Breeders' Cup preview, if you've watched some of my other videos, really like Chop Chop a lot. So it's not that I don't like the horse. I like the horse a lot. I don't love the horse at 8-5. Admittedly, if I was betting in this race, I probably would not be betting on Chop Chop. But in terms of likely top pick, yeah, I think Chop Chop's the most likely winner in this race. Admittedly, it's coming off of a long layoff from that Breeders' Cup of juvenile fillies. Everything I just said is absolutely right about the fact that, you can expect a little bit of a hangover there. But here's the thing. This race sets up, I think, nicely for Chop Chop. I think there's a fair amount of speed up front in this race. I think that Chop Chop is going to be able to have a smaller field. It's much like what I just talked about with Evan Singh. You put Chop Chop in a 13, 14 horse field, it just leaves too much for this horse to do. You put this horse in a 7 horse field, which is the case here, not going to be that far back and will be able to get through the traffic just fine. I trust the connections explicitly. Cox has been getting this horse ready for a while, 24% off the layoff. Even though this horse didn't run its best race at that Breeders' Cup Juvenile, still owns the best buyer speed figure of this field. I just think this is a horse that is sitting on a really strong effort. I think the race pace sets up well for this horse. So I'm going to use Chop Chop as my top pick. Now, in terms of value, I do really like Forest Chimes, the 7 horse at 4-1 for Jason Barkley with Corey Lannery aboard. This is a horse that just broke its maiden, and she did so in fashion, won by 7.5 lengths on debut at Fairgrounds on a good surface, so took a little bit of moisture and was still able to win. Really like this horse. I think this horse has a lot of ability, another little bit of a closer. So I think, Chop Chop is obviously that 8-5. If you're looking for a little bit more value, but you think the race sets up well for closers, look for Forest Chimes at 4-1 to add that value. Well, let's move to the final 2 races on the card, which are the 2 grade 3 races, the Louisiana Derby, race 13, mile and a 16th on the dirt for 4-year-olds and up. And this is a race where, you could go a lot of different ways. There's a lot of really interesting horses in this race. Obviously, a horse like Chess Chief, who's just kind of an old war horse at this point. Forza de Oro, a big-time Brad Cox horse. Zozos, another big-time Brad Cox horse. And I said, the hell with it. I bucked the trend. I wasn't just going to go with Brad Cox horses the whole card. And I ended up going with the 9 Mr. Wireless, 5-1 on the morning line for Brett Calhoun with Deshaun Barker aboard. Those 2, when they team up at Fairgrounds, get this. We drool over Cox and Giroux, and understandably so. When Calhoun and Parker team up, winning a 30% clip at Fairgrounds, that's not half bad. And Calhoun's off to a very strong start at Fairgrounds, winning 33% of his entries to this point. This is a versatile horse that can sit very close to the pace, can sit a little further off, to sit mid-pack. I like the versatility this horse brings. I think this horse, the last few times out, is really starting to unlock just how good this horse can be. Also has handled wet surfaces well. So if it is a little bit of an off track, really like Mr. Wireless at 5-1 to provide some value as my top pick in this particular race. I just think there are some other question marks there. I don't know if Forza Doro gets sucked up into some speed. I don't know how Zozos is going to do second time back from the layoff. I'm maybe not quite as sold on Classic Run, or Run Classic, I should say, because I think a horse is also going to press the pace a little bit. So where did I go for value, though? I went to the number 3, Intrepid Heart. This is a horse that is getting the blinkers put on, should be a little bit more forwardly placed. This horse has really strong late speed figures. So again, if I'm anticipating this race correctly. I think the pace will break down a little bit. I look for Intrepid Heart to make that run late. And here's the real kicker. If you cross the last time out off the form, the last 6 times out, this horse finished second. This horse loves finishing underneath. Okay. Doesn't love winning all the time, but loves finishing underneath. But in fact, 7 of the last 8 times finished second. And the only time it didn't finish second, it won. So, he's got a lot of ability there. 8-1 in the morning line. I'll gladly take those odds for a horse that's demonstrated the ability to run and win effectively underneath at this distance. Now let's go to the final race on the card, which is, of course, the Grade 3 Lecomte Stakes, which is a big-time Kentucky Derby prep. And where are we going to go in this final race? Well, as much as I tried to buck the trend with Brad Cox in the previous race, ultimately I ended up with Instant Coffee as my top pick, 5-2 in the morning line for Brad Cox and Florent Giroux. And Instant Coffee, of course, coming off that super impressive win at the Kentucky Jockey Club, which was a Grade 2 race last time out, beating horses like Curly Jack. This is a horse that admittedly did not run great in that Breeders' Futurity against Forte and Loggins, but still finished 4th that day in a 14-horse field, which I think is something to be said. Again, a huge field. This is not going to be nearly as big of a field. Instant Coffee is a bit of a closer. The Lecomte Stakes typically has been kind to closers. This is another Bolt Doro baby. Always like that pedigree. And being in a smaller field means Instant Coffee is not going to be as far back. It's important to point out, in that Breeders' Futurity, this horse was sitting 10th, okay? Last time out in the Kentucky Jockey Club was sitting 5th or 6th most of the trip. Much easier to get through traffic when you're sitting 5th or 6th. I would imagine Luis Saez is going to have that horse sitting in a very similar spot. And by the way, Luis Saez and Brad Cox, what do they do when they team up? They win 47% of the time. So I like Instant Coffee a lot here. It should be pointed out, Itzos, the number 6 horse, is scratching from this particular race. I know a lot of people make a big deal about how Brad Cox has Florent Giroux on Tappett's Conquest. I'm not as big a fan as that horse. The works do look good, but that horse hasn't run since October 10th. So or October 1st, I should say, going to go in a different direction in terms of value. And so in terms of value, I'm going to go to a guy who I don't usually go to, which is Ken McPeak, but I'm going to go to Dennington. 8-1 in the morning line, gets the blinkers put on. I think that's really beneficial in this race. This race does feature some speed. I think Echo again is going to have some speed, obviously. I think Bromley's going to have a little bit of speed. I think Confidence Game for sure is going to have speed. I think Tappett's Conquest is probably going to have some speed. I think Two Phils might show a little bit of speed depending on how they want to play things. But there's some horses that are going to be forwardly placed. That said, I think Dennington is going to sit behind maybe that early pace, sit maybe 3rd or 4th. I think that's a much better position for this horse. Gets Corey Lannery aboard. I really think the blinkers are going to make a big difference here. This is a horse that runs consistently, has run against Good Company, has run against Instant Coffee before, has run against Tappett's Conquest. Finished 6th in the Smarty Jones last time out against Victory Formation, who's a big-time horse, who I think a lot of us think is a big-time Derby contender. So I think the blinkers on to Dennington at 8-1 in the morning line makes a big difference. I'm going to use that horse as my value play in the Grade 3 Lecomte. All right. Well, that was 14 races. We got through it in 43 minutes, which is pretty damn amazing, actually. And I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Next week, we're going to keep bouncing around, going to different tracks. Next week, we're probably going to go to Pegasus and go down to Gulfstream Park for that big day that they have down there. But a lot of other tracks we're going to be following throughout the Derby Trail. Wherever the Derby Trail goes, we're going to follow there on Capping the Card to have you covered. So I hope it's a profitable day for you at the fairgrounds. I hope some of these top picks obviously come in and hit. Hope you can strategically use some of those value plays underneath, either vertically or maybe as an upset pick in some of your sequences. So best of luck to you at Fairgrounds on Saturday. Remember to subscribe to Trust the Profits on our YouTube page for all of our great content. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace. And until next time, friends, my name is Matthew Desantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.